button. Hi, Jesse. There. We're waiting for one more, Jesse, and then we can get started. I think I'm unmuted. Can you all hear me? Yes? Okay, I'm going to start the meeting. As long as everybody can hear me, I want to welcome everybody. We'll get started with introductions in just a minute. Again, as you probably know, we're still under Executive Order 202, which means this is an open meeting. It's going to be recorded. It's going to be on YouTube. I think you know the drill. We have some community members that will be joining us, I'm sure. Janine, when community members want to speak, what is the protocol for that?
If you could please raise your hand using the raise hand function, and we'll call on you by turn.
Okay, thank you, Janine. My name is JD Nolan. I'm the co-chair of the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee. I'm here with my other co-chair, the great Paul Devlin. Paul is here, wave Paul, and Paul will be taking the second item on the agenda. We have two items on the agenda. One is about the so-called BEP site. That's at 705 10th Avenue. I think we know where it is. It's between 48th, 49th Street and 10th Avenue. And there's going to be a presentation by HPD and the developer Douglaston and the Actors Fund on this affordable housing site. The second presentation, where Paul will take over, is the Rebuild by Design and Syracuse University. They're going to present something on cities at risk, a conversation on the creation of a green district on the west side. That should be interesting. So are there any questions before we get started about tonight? And if they're not, I'm going to start with introductions. I'm JD. Welcome, everybody. Paul is the other co-chair. Paul.
Hey everybody, Paul Devlin, West 45th Street.
Thank you, Paul. Frank, I'm just going to go down the line. Frank.
Hi, Frank Hall Zubiak, a committee member, and live on West 44th. You're also doing it geographically, JD.
That's right. Okay, we'll go south. 36th Street. There is Brian.
Thank you. Hi, Brian Weber, public member, and on 36th Street.
Welcome, Brian. And we're even further south, Dale. Welcome, Dale.
Dale Corvino, committee member, West 34th Street.
Yeah, welcome, Dale. Leslie, I see you there in the corner.
Leslie Williams, member, West 51st Street.
Welcome, Leslie. And Theodore.
Hi, I'm Theodore Arenas. I'm a member and I'm on 58th, probably the highest person up in the north sector up here. So nice to see everyone tonight.
Nice to see you, Theodore. Welcome. And Bob, welcome, Bob.
Hi, Bob Benfato, public member and head of the bid, the Hudson Yards Hell's Kitchen Alliance.
Great. Welcome, Joe.
Joe Sucha, committee member, West 35th Street.
And Dolores?
I didn't know we were outing our locations, but
You don't
Theodore,
have
I'm
to.
up north with you. Dolores Rubin, committee member. I need to say hi, Barbara. So happy to see you. Sorry about that. I'm on West 55th Street.
Welcome, Dolores, and David, welcome.
Yeah, David Solnick. I'm on West 42nd Street in the Orion condominium.
Hey, welcome, David. Chris LeBron, I see you there. Chris.
Hello, Chris LeBron, West 47th Street.
Hey, welcome, Chris. Now that's our crew. I turn it over, I'm not sure to HPD or to Douglaston. You want to introduce your members? Who wants to take over here? Somebody? Nobody?
I can start here.
HPD?
Yep.
Yeah, start with you.
Hi, Melissa Otten, Senior Planner with Manhattan Planning Team. I'm joined here tonight by Felipe Cortez from the Manhattan Planning Team and Paris Strotter, the Deputy, sorry, I was about to give you a very high title, Assistant Commissioner of Planning and Pre-Development.
Welcome, Melissa. Go ahead, HPD. Paris.
Oh yeah,
Thank
I
you
won't
so-
say much, but thanks for making time. Hopefully my mic is working this time.
This time, yes.
But anyway, thanks so much. I'm gonna give it back to Melissa and the development team. We have a presentation for you, but thanks again for adding us to the agenda.
Welcome, Paris. Melissa, is that more on your team?
No, we have Felipe Cortez here as well. From the Manhattan
And
team.
Yeah.
I can pick it up just from the development team, folks here. So Joel Kolkman with Douglaston Development. From Douglaston, you also have Stephen Charno, who many of you know. And we also obviously have our Actors Fund colleagues, Daniel Arno and Barbara Davis. Need no introduction. And from our architecture team, we have Paul Carr from S9 Architects. Also, one additional name here, we have Arden Sokolow from Douglaston Development as well.
Joel, thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to you, Joel, if you want to make your presentation. I think we've seen it. I think you were last here a little over a year ago with the presentation. So welcome, everybody. And Joel, get started whenever you want.
All right, well, I'm going to hand it over to Melissa. She's going to kick off the presentation, but I will say before that, we were here in January at the Land Use Committee meeting just a few months back. And then before that, it had been over a year, about a year from there. So, but Melissa will take it away, and then I'll take it from there too.
Well, thank you. Hi, everyone. We did a full round of introductions, so I don't need to go over that part of my presentation. But I just want to say, as a first step in the ULURP process, we are pleased to be here tonight, this time in ULURP, to present the Rialto West project, also known as the DEP site project. Which is located to the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee. The Rialto West will be a new 8-story mixed-use building consisting of approximately 158 affordable residential units and ground floor community facility space. Rialto West is located at block 1077, lot 29. JD, as you mentioned, which is along 10th Avenue between West 48th and West 49th Streets in the Clinton neighborhood of Community Board 4. Janine, can you go to the next slide, please? So here you can see the location and the site. The site was previously used as construction staging for the Manhattan water tunnel shaft site. The site also contains a rail cut for the Amtrak Empire line right away. And, as you can see here, we have the entire project area, which is the entire lot, but the development site where the affordable housing development is proposed to be built is outlined here in red. And the remaining portion of the lot will be constructed as an open space project. Next slide, please. So to facilitate the proposed project, several land use actions are needed. The first being the designation of an urban development action area and approval of an urban development action area project. We're also asking for a zoning text amendment, which will consolidate the existing special permit for height and setback, and as well as additional bulk modifications that are applicable to the development site. We're asking for special permits pursuant to that new zoning section to modify height and setback, as well as to modify rear yard equivalents. Next slide, please. And then we're also asking for a special permit to develop over the Amtrak right-of-way in order to build the proposed development. And lastly, we're asking for a disposition of easements in order to, for the purposes of light and air, as well as in connection with the use of development rights from the open space area to the development site. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joel to go into further detail about the proposed project.
Great, thank you. So our proposal will be 8 stories and 77 feet tall. And kind of as I preface this, the massing and the program in terms of unit mix definitely meets the points of agreement, the Western United points of agreement. So I will just preface that with all of this. So the 8 stories and 77 feet tall, as many of you know, is from the points of agreement. We'll have 158 permanently affordable housing units. There will be, in our unit mix, we have the minimum of at least 50% of 2 and 3 bedroom units here, with that breakdown of 22% studios, 27% 1 bedrooms, 41% 2 bedrooms, and 10% 3 bedrooms. The amenities in the building include on-site laundry, a fitness room, and a bike room. And we are accommodating the DPR public comfort station. And the layout of this space has been coordinated with the Parks Department. In particular, we're making sure that there is space for storage for gardening tools and equipment, which I know is something that the community board had specifically raised. And so we're happy to be able to do that. And as we discussed, this is kind of hot off the presses news last presentation, but we are really excited about our community facility partner that we are securing for this space at the ground floor. And from that, we'll go to the next slide and we'll talk, and Daniel will speak to this.
Great, thank you, Joel. Hey, everyone, my name's Daniel. I run the affordable housing programs at the Actors Fund. It's good to see you all tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the community facility program, really in response to the community board's concerns with the loss of artist studios, the displacement of working artists, the need for commercial space for arts and cultural organizations. We're really thrilled to partner with Indie Space as the community facility tenant. Indie Space serves, for those of you who don't know, serves the independent theater community by providing affordable creative space for a diverse group of performing artists. For this project, Indie Space will partner with the Artist Co-op and Waterwell Theater to meet 3 goals: 1, operating theater space, 2, subsidized rental, and 3, community space. Both the Artist Co-op and Waterwell Theater have been operating in the community district and really need long-term sustainable space. So we're really hoping that this is a long-term solution for them. Waterwell would dedicate one of their spaces to its partnership with the Professional Performing Arts School, which is right down the street on 48th Street. They already have a working relationship with that performing arts school. And Indie Space will be programming another rehearsal space within the facility, really targeting historically excluded artists who are in need of long-term space to develop their work. So we're really couldn't be more thrilled to be partnering with Indie Space to really activate and operate this community facility. Randy Berry and Paul Leibowitz, who are at the helm of Indie Space, are joining us for today's meeting. And if there are questions later for them, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them. And on that, back to you, Joel.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. All right, our next slide, please. Okay, so the building design. So we are very excited about this building design, again, being led by S9 Architects. And the intent here was to really play off of the industrial heritage and character that you see more on the western, in far western side of the area here. And so you have larger windows, the brick facade, giving you that more loft feel. And again, that goes to that materiality here, both with the brick and also with the metal panels. Again, that mixed material that you see with a lot of buildings, again, kind of further west here. Also, in terms of the scale, again, so we are seeking that request and approval for the additional height, but we wanted to be mindful of the scale of our building as it relates to our neighbors. So you could see, this is a great image that shows this, really the brick line, or the portion of the building that's brick, we intend to have it be aligned with the adjacent buildings. So that helps bring down the scale of the building overall and creates that continuous building line there. And if there are any questions about the design, obviously we have Paul Carr, as I said before, here to answer anything there. Our next slide. Okay, the big one. So just getting ahead of this is not changed since we came to you in January. A reminder that the big announcement that we had in January is that we had added an additional income band at the 130% AMI level, responding to the requests for higher income units, again, aligned with the Western Rail Areas points of agreement. So we were very happy, along with the HPD, to be able to show that movement here, but I'll go through the rest of the program. So we have the 15% formerly homeless units, which again is a requirement of all affordable housing projects in the city now. And we have then 25% of the units at 50% AMI, 20% at 80% of AMI, 30% at 120, and the 10 at 130. The income eligibility ranges that you see here, these reflect, they look like very large ranges, but that is from, a single person living in a studio to a family of 6 or 7 living in a 3-bedroom. So you're just seeing the whole range there. And that, again, that range corresponds to the rent. The lower end is obviously studio rent. The higher end is a rent for a 3-bedroom. Next slide. Okay, and so this is just the timeline. As you know, we certified into ULURP March 28th. We were very excited to reach that milestone. We're here with you all tonight to discuss the project, which would bring the community board 60-day period to a close in June. We would then go to the borough president in June, followed by the city planning commission, city council, with an anticipated ULURP approval in the fall, I think end of October, beginning of November of 2022. So that is our presentation, and look forward to answering any questions you have.
Well, Joel, Melissa, Daniel, thank you so much. I was remiss not to introduce Janine Potente, our community associate. We'll be keeping order here. And Jesse Bodine has joined us. So that is always a privilege when Jesse joins us. I want to mention one more thing. Joel, as Joel says, we have time. We don't have to make a final letter tonight from the committee, because we can also revisit this in May at the committee meeting and still make the ULURP. I want to add one more thing. Joel was right to bring up the points of agreement about the height, but let's not forget that the point of agreement said this was to be a moderate and middle income development. At the moment, the change, I do not think will satisfy either this board or the community. It's still 60% of the units, I believe, are still under 80% AMI. So we still have a ways to go. I know Joel understands that, and I hope HPD understands that. But at the same time, we very much want this project to succeed. And we're very grateful for the open space, the bathroom, the storage space, your attention to detail in the design. We're very appreciative of that, but we still have a ways to go, as you all know. So let's keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to open up the conversation. I want to welcome community members who are here. I'm sure they'll want to weigh in too, because they have been part of this process since the fall of Rome. Since the fall of Rome, this has been going on for quite a long time. So, committee members, do we have anybody want to ask any questions? I don't know if you have a raised hand thing.
Dale does.
Dale has his hand up. Dale, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions on the design. I do have comments or questions on the income bands, but first, I just want to make a couple of points of clarification on the design. So on the street facade, there is that setback to meet the street wall of the side street. And I assume it creates terraces at that floor, whatever floor that is, 6th floor?
Yeah, there are two side streets. You mean 48, probably?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a very quick question for me to answer. I don't think I need Paul for that one. That setback, it's actually just a foot. So it's not creating terraces. It's just to create that visual difference there. And that slight setback will help there, but we're not creating terraces.
Okay, so it's really a cheat. Okay. And
well, you know.
It's a cheat. Let's be real. And at one point, the facade for the park side was proposed as some kind of like green wall. Is that in the current iteration?
So it's our intention to have the design of that, specifically that facade, interact with the open space. And we're exploring many options. One of our main options is still the green wall. And as we kind of further advance the more detailed design, we will finalize that. But between that facade and our ground floor uses, we're very mindful of making sure that our building interacts well with the open space.
Okay, so at the moment, there's no advancement on that front.
That's right. That's right.
All right, thanks. I'll circle back later.
Thanks, Dale. Dolores, I see you have your hand up. Welcome.
Thanks. So I just want to reiterate what JD already stated. We're appreciative of all of you being responsive to some of the community concerns. However, we had expected, maybe not since the fall of Rome, but we had expected that we would be able to continue to have balance within our community, which means that we are expanding those income bands. Not sure where we can continue to have that conversation, but I think it's very important to recognize that, and this will probably come up at housing, Joe, when this comes up there, the density, so to speak, within that specific several blocks of a lot of already low income supportive housing, et cetera, that takes us out of balance. And again, not to go ahead and take away from the need of housing for many different folks across different income levels, but we'd like to see families come back to the neighborhood, stay in the neighborhood, et cetera. So where we can make more advances there, we really are hoping to see that.
Thank you, Dolores. Joe, you see your hand up?
Yeah. So a couple of housekeeping things first, and this is for the development team. Could you please send to the board a full set of plans into our Dropbox. Also include a stacking chart and a distribution chart so we understand what is per income band, like do it by colors, 80, 100, so we understand what's where. And then as a follow-up to that, to HPD, to Felipe, I gotta say that I would never want to make this request again. This is a standard thing the community board has gotten over literally decades, a full presentation on a ULURP that gives us full information about a building. So whatever's coming up in the future, could I ask you to communicate both down and up, that's our basic we need in terms of information and understand what the building is. Also to Joel, there's a courtyard I saw, so make sure the plans are included for that. And hopefully you'll be able to detail what that's used for. That's for the tenants, right, on the western side. And is there any open space anticipated on the roof of the building? Or is there a green roof, or is there a solar, whatever? Just if you can just detail that, just a quick note for housekeeping to us. Could you tell us about that?
Sure. So the roof, there will not be any space for the residents on the roof. There's a lot of mechanical equipment, and I don't want to misspeak, so Paul Carr could jump in on this in terms of the technical details, but the amount of mechanical equipment on the roof that we need, because again, this building is being built over an Amtrak right of way, which everyone obviously knows, but that just limits the space that we have for a lot of things that we normally put on the ground floor, for instance. So the roof is very much going to be occupied. Was there another part of the question, Joe?
Yes, is it a green roof at all on the parts that are not occupied?
We currently don't have that developed, but I think we'd also then have to really look at what space is there for the green roof in general.
And then again, going back to the roof, I didn't see the mechanical equipment bulkheads actually shown in the renderings. You need to provide that for us. We've had huge issues and ULURP issues before, where we know that the mechanicals are not part of the height of a building, but if it's a 20-foot height above the 77, the community is going to really want to know about this. So that should be developed and presented. Otherwise, that will cause issues down the road. Okay. Of course, we'll talk about income bands, but I noticed one thing in the ULURP that I'm kind of surprised at, and that is I see it talks about open space and an easement, but it says that there can be nothing built within 30 feet of the building. That's for building separation purposes. We are expecting that the entire parcel on 10th Avenue will have an open space easement and saying nothing can be built on any of it. So where, Joel, has that changed?
I am happy to speak to that, but if HPD wants to speak to that first, I will.
I'm sorry, I'm asking you as the developer, because you met with us about this.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
but that's sorry, yeah. I'm going to jump in on this because that's not for the developer to respond. Melissa, do you want to take it on, or I can take it without any problem?
Sure. I mean, Felipe, feel free to add, but the easement.
She froze, Felipe.
That is being proposed for 30 feet is obviously building. As far as the easement on the entirety of the site, we've been working really closely with the Department of Parks, but with DP.
Yeah, sorry, Melissa's breaking up too much. Felipe, can you please answer that?
Under their jurisdiction, or it's their site.
Melissa, you broke up, so it was very hard for us
either Felipe or Paris to speak to that, so we can hear her.
Yeah, so I believe what Melissa was saying, that the placement of the easements had been work that we've been doing with the Parks Department and DEP. So the 30 feet easement that is from, let's say, from the property line that divides the affordable housing piece with the open space, there's going to be a 30 feet easement over there. That was something that was put together with DEP, and that addresses, the issue with the Amtrak piece. We made sure that, nothing could be built in that piece, but DEP wants to preserve the flexibility for in the future to build something. It could be something small, nothing big, so they can have access to, I believe, the tunnel that is over under there.
No. I think you're missing the point, Felipe. This is I want to note, the board will then meet directly with, if this is coming not from HPD, but from DEP, the board and its council member will meet with DEP regarding this, because this is not then a developer issue nor an HPD issue. And it is part of the political discussion about this open space, and they will take it to there. I wanted to highlight it for the committee. I was trying to understand if it was merely from the developer or the HPD, and you clarified it for us. I really appreciate that.
That's fine.
And let me just reframe what we did here. As the easement was developed to be the minimum required for DOB and from fire department in order to build the building.
Correct.
It does not. We're not doing an easement to memorialize the open space. So that was not the intention of the easement. The intention of the easement is just to make sure that that those windows and those units facing 10th Avenue have legal light and air. The intention is not. The intention of the easement is not to make for the open space. Just to
understand clearly, we're not in the Balkans. It's a project that is in total, and the board and its council member will meet with DEP regarding this easement, because we're under the impression we are securing permanent open space with minimal encumbrance, of course, for the various maintenance, things like that. But this does not preclude the building of structures on the rest of that space. And I will tell you, you have a broader community that has dealt with this prior to this project even being conceived.
That's correct.
If you think they're agitated about the income bands, the idea that in the future, if this is not solved with this ULURP, people will be louder.
But Joe, the one thing I would say, just the timing and the genesis of this is needing that easement, as Paris said, in order to get a sign off on the affordable housing. So that's really all that's happened in the conversations with the park. It is not as if we have heard that anything's contemplated in any way. It was just this mechanism needed to be set up so that you could get DOB signed off on the building. You know what I mean?
As you know, the future development of this open space is predicated upon this ULURP, and our public comment and our resolution of this will happen in this ULURP. So therefore, we are looking for a global understanding and a carefully crafted easement that preserves the open space in its entirety for the long term, except for the minimal maintenance structure or equipment they need to build. I know for a fact that any agency, without having a prescriptive, specific information, will then do whatever they want. That has never been the deal, the agreement as part of the third water tunnel shaft agreement outside of this project. So we have to settle it and have it done. And by the way, HPD, it's not directed at you at all. We know this is very much a DEP thing, but we will work to settle it in its entirety at the same time. So,
I understand your point, Joe. And we were told that DEP, wants to preserve a little bit of flexibility for the future. You never know what's going to happen from here in 100 years, and they want to preserve this. No, I mean,
I'm a city agency. I'm a city agency, and I want to preserve the ability to do anything I want in the future somehow, irrespective of going through a heavy political process on this site to begin with. So our job is to create a structure, right?
Yep.
So the last part is the income bands, and obviously we will continue to work with the agency and with the development team, and we are requesting ongoing meetings with the development team to begin to engage with this and to come to solution. In our discussions with the council member, everyone said that this site is easier to solve than the MTA site. We all agree on that. And we are looking to do two things. One is a broader range of income bands and to eliminate any of the donut holes here. So we don't want any gaps in between income bands. Whenever someone applies here with Housing Connect, anywhere between that 50% and up to the 130, we're looking for that to be seamless. So we just say that so you can hear it. And from the development team, we're going forward and working with you on that. Any of your further thoughts? Nothing you would not expect to hear from us.
Yeah, I would like to say that, as the experience dictates, we're always welcome and open to continue the conversation. But I think at this point, I would say that that conversation will need to happen with us, with HPD. The development team has been trying to, be very responsive with your suggestions and requests. But at this point, I believe we're in a situation where, like, is the city, the one that has taken a little bit longer on address these suggestions. And so I would encourage you, if you want to have conversations about the MIs, incumbents, tiers, and donut holes, that should be directed to us, Joe. So we can, as we did it for the MTA side, we can obviously coordinate maybe an additional meeting, but yeah.
So
we'll need to be
I just want to know two things. First is we're going to propose a separate letter tonight about communication and how we engage with developers in general. And we'll talk about that at the end of this. But for the issue of income bands, we will continue to talk to all the parties. The board will not be directed as to who to speak to, who not to speak to. That's not how we work. And we will work with you directly and the full team. We'll work with the developer, work with everybody. The idea that we're being heard is really no longer an issue. This has started ULURP. We now need to negotiate, agree, and settle. And that's what we need to do during a ULURP process. So we're not interested in being heard anymore. We've heard that for now a couple of years. Just want to put that out there to say that's the point we're at. It's time to move ahead. Thank you very much. Come back to me at the end, JD.
Thanks, Joe. I want to move on. We'll get back. Leslie, you had your hand up, and then Paul.
Yes, Joe, I have a quick question about artwork in the public areas. Is there any plan for any artwork?
When you say public area, are you talking about the public open space or the building itself?
Well, in the building and in the public space.
No plans at the moment in terms of the open space, the adjacent open space, but absolutely as a community facility tenant and Indie Space might be able to speak to this more. Our goal is really to have them activate that space with arts and cultural uses, mostly performing arts, because that's what Indie Space's focus is. So I would say yes, absolutely in the community facility space.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Paul.
Thanks, JD. I think as co-chair, I just want to repeat that there's a lack of information here for this ULURP process, and I would really implore the development team and HPD to provide us more information. I mean, a 13-page PowerPoint slide presented to us 40 minutes before a meeting starts is not sufficient for us to make a decision and render an opinion. And we're hoping that by the May meeting, we're able to actually make a statement about this ULURP process. But right now, we are ill-equipped and we need more information. And I would repeat Joe's concerns about the AMI bands and the mix of units. I see there is a slide in the presentation that you emailed to us that you didn't review today in the presentation that you just went over. But a deeper understanding of that, filling the donut holes, and making sure that we have more moderate and middle income. This notion of cherry picking from the point of agreement to the benefits of the development team and ignoring the things that benefit the community is something that we have always been very vocal against. And as Joe points out, we are now at the point where we have to make a decision. So we have to reach agreements, but we can't reach an agreement until we have the data, and you haven't provided us the data. So let's just try to move forward on this. As JD pointed out at the beginning, this is an exciting project. We're looking forward to a successful project, but we're hoping it's successful in the way that addresses the community needs and the development needs. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Any other questions from the committee at this point? If not, Janine, do we have any speakers from the community who want to speak?
Leslie still has his hand up.
I'm so sorry, Leslie. Your hand is up. Did you want to speak some more? No. Okay. Thank you, Leslie. Janine, from the community.
Yes, I'm going to bring over Katie and Richard.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me?
We hear you and the cat.
Great. Yes, he's very angry. He's angry about this as well. So I have two things. One, I am concerned. I mean, a lot of this is new to me. I'm trying to figure out all the big words, but the open space and this easement thing, if that is purely for DEP to potentially construct things in relations to their work, can't that be tailored to state that it would be only for DEP in the need? Because right now it sounds like it could be potential development by anybody. And here in Hell's Kitchen, we're starved for green space and open space. So right now, the fact that that is a vacant open lot that we can't access is really frustrating. And, you know, to be told we're going to have this beautiful open space built, but maybe at some point a structure will be built on it is really unfortunate, because we need to know that we're going to have the open space. And then as far as the income bands, you know, I did read through that whole 30-page letter relating to the MTA site, and a lot of that information does relate to this. As part of the Western Rail Yard's points of agreement, 72.7% of the affordable units that were constructed were below 60% AMI. That is a huge amount. Rents are skyrocketing. I know so many people that are getting priced out of their market rate units because landlords are jacking the rent up $900, $1,000. And this is not a fancy luxury building. We're talking about walk-up brownstones as well. There is a serious lack in middle income and moderate income affordable housing in this neighborhood for, you know, regular working class, middle income people to have a decent place to live. Not many people can afford these, you know, $3,000 a month, one-bedroom apartments or more in luxury buildings. We need to have housing that is accessible to everybody. And, you know, our community district does have a lot of supportive housing. We've obviously shown we're open to it, but we can't have a situation where it's only low-income housing and super expensive luxury housing, because then you're going to have a situation where it's just rich people and poor people. All the working class people will be gone. There will be nobody here to shop at our local businesses, go to our restaurants, and do all of that stuff that supports the economy of our neighborhood. So, you know, it's frustrating to me, because it just sounds like people don't want to directly say that the city screwed up, but the city screwed up, and you guys are all kind of skirting around the issue. And as a regular citizen who's recently gotten to know all the community board stuff, it's maddening. And it makes me really concerned about our government and what's going on. We like to think that our city agencies and elected officials are smart and they care about us. But this is making me feel like nobody gives a shit. And it's just about money and developers. And that's really frustrating, because I pay taxes to live here. I help the economy. I work here. I buy a lot of stuff locally. I should be able to stay here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Richard Narens, are you with us?
Sorry, I just wanted to address the open space portion of Katie's question real quick. Just to be clear, the open space, you know, it's a separate project that's already received all the approvals that it's needed. The Department of Parks went through that approval process already, as far as the design and everything. So I just want to be clear that, you know, that is already set in stone. And as far as the easement, I think just to clarify, again, the easement that we're requesting, it's not for DEP, it's actually for the affordable housing building. We need that easement in order to maintain air for the windows that are going to be on that facade that faces the open space. And we need those windows in order to have bedrooms. And so they're just legal windows that are required for those residential units. And it's really just to protect our building. I hear the concerns about losing the open space without other protections, but you know, as the community board noted, that's DEP, and I can't really speak for DEP. But I just wanted to clarify that there, Katie, if that helps.
Melissa,
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Sure.
Of course. Oh, go ahead.
So it was mentioned that the easement for the windows is a DOB requirement and it's a minimum easement. Can we get a maximum easement that's greater than the 30 feet? And that would then cover the entire lot?
This is something that we've been,
The term minimum easement just made me think maybe there's a maximum.
you know, I can't, I'm not a designer. I can't speak to that.
Well, maybe somebody else on the team can.
But
No, because
what I will-
that's, as we discussed before, that's something that we've been working with DEP, and DEP is the agency that requested to preserve flexibility on the site. So therefore, that's why they allow to have these 30 feet easement for the benefit of the affordable housing piece.
I just need to note again for the public, we are one city. It doesn't matter that you control part of it. It's one thing, and we all need to work together to make sure there is a permanent protection for open space. And Melissa, the fact that it's approved for the open space, there is no easement recorded against here saying it'll be permanently used as open space and cannot be encumbered. And that's what the public needs to know and understand. That's what we discovered through these documents. And we thank you for clarifying it, and we will direct our questions to DEP. There is no question on that.
I'm going to thank you, everybody. Thank you, Melissa. I want to move on to the public. Richard Nance is going to speak. I just want to say one thing about DEP. We have dealt with DEP for almost 20 years to try to get this open space. And I think, I'm not saying we don't, there's a lack of trust, but like the US said to Gorbachev, we want to trust but verify. So let's leave it at that right now. Richard, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all for your work on this matter. A couple questions. The easement you're speaking of, it sounds like a light and air easement in order to make sure that those windows are not obstructed. You can have the rooms that you need. Is that what it is?
That is what it is, yes.
Yes. That's all.
So it's not like
That's
something's going to be
exactly
built
it.
there. In fact, it's an easement stating to that nothing's going to be built there.
Only for 30 feet. To the east.
Only for 30 feet. I see.
That's the issue. Right.
All right. Second of all, would you confirm, I think you have in the past, but confirm again for me that there's a 50% neighborhood preference on this?
There will be a community board
Yes.
for 50% preference, yes.
Yes.
All right. How come we don't see plans that show all the mechanicals on the roof and how high that's going? Aren't there plans that exist to that effect?
Yes, and as Joe pointed out, you have in a list of follow-up materials. We will share those all with the board. We did not include that in tonight's presentation.
That's unfortunate. But we'll look forward to seeing that. I can only emphasize Katie's presentation. This is a neighborhood that has fought long and hard to preserve itself, its diversity, and to be a home for the wide range of incomes that have always occupied this area. And your failure to move off of this indicates just a complete stonewalling of us, of this neighborhood, of our efforts over most of our entire lifetime trying to preserve and create a neighborhood that will last. And you're forcing us into a situation where this neighborhood is simply one of poor people and rich people with no room for the firefighters, the teachers, the nurses, the two-income families, the people with kids who deserve a chance to stay here. Just like Katie said, we're watching all of the children who grew up here and got apartments during the pandemic having to leave as their rents are jacked up by thousands of dollars because they're market rent units. Your complete disinterest in our situation, in our attempt to plan for a balanced community is just atrocious and just so undemocratic. And it's appalling to see you all sit here and talk about this with just such coolness and lack of interest in our efforts over our entire lifetimes. Thank you.
Richard. Janine, do we have other community speakers?
Yes, I moved Elka over and I'm gonna move over Joan Novak.
Thank you. Welcome, Elka.
Hi. Hi, how are you? This seems like such a long process. How many years have we been doing this? So first, the building looks good, you know, and we gave in on the height. You should know that. That's above our normal height for this area. So I'm still concerned about the income levels. And as Joe said, no donut holes in here. We need more moderate middle income housing. We were promised that. And, you know, the promises haven't been kept very well on the MTA side. So I'm hoping that we will make out better. The 15% for formerly homeless, we certainly understand. And we hope they will be families. Families, we have a great need. We have lots of schools and a few parks, and also families would be certainly welcome. And regarding the easement, I assume the 30 feet, it would still be green space. You can't build anything on it, but it would still be green. And I think that actually has been something that DEP has said from the very beginning. They would, at some point, they may need to have access to it. So as long as it can be green space, and you've worked this out with the Department of Parks as part of that design, that would be okay. So I'm happy to say that a few of you are coming to our next block meeting, so we can talk about this some more. And again, income bands need to come up. We need to get, as Richard, hard to follow Richard, but we need these teachers, we need these nurses, we need firemen to live in our neighborhood. They can't do that now. So thank you.
Elka, could you just tell everybody who you represent, so in case there's some folks that don't know how long you've been working on this project?
The West 47th, 48th Streets Block Association. And we've been working on this piece of property for over 20 years, so.
Thank you, Alpha. Janine, I believe Joan is the speaker.
Yes, Joan was brought over.
Thank you. Welcome, Joan.
Well, hi there. Thank you so much for letting me speak. You know, I don't have any real position of status in this neighborhood, although I 5 years. And frankly, my husband and I, we both work in New York City, and we pay 50% of our money to live in New York City as taxpayers. So we are your tax base, and we want neighbors who can shop in the stores, just like Cape of neighbor who will be going to the schools like PS 51, and will know that tonight there was a benefit that was put through with Chipotle to fund their books. We want neighbors who we can create a community with. We don't only want supportive housing and the super wealthy here. And I don't know why you can't get that this neighborhood is going to add so much to the city if we're allowed to exist and if we're allowed to thrive and grow. I don't know why you want to just cut our throats with planning that is inappropriate for us. So please consider the tax base that lives here, that we need to have neighbors, we need to have people that go with Katie on her Litter Legion, and that, like, I plant flowers in the medians on 9th Avenue. And we have people in this neighborhood that really participate, and we need to continue that so that we have a Hell's Kitchen that we all love and are proud of, and is like it it has actually a sound to it that people all over the United States, when you say Hell's Kitchen, they haven't, I don't think that's going to serve New York at all. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you. Janine, any more speakers?
No one else has their hand up.
Thank you. Joe, there was one more item you want to bring up and then I will speak. Joe, are you there?
Yes, yes. Just wanted to note the issue of the special permit proposed under 96-112. This is entirely analogous to the special permit from the MTA site. And we again are asking the development team and HPD not to pursue this matter of the one-stop shopping special permit and instead seek to resolve the matters with the standard special permit over the rail cut, over rail right of way. The board has reviewed about 9 projects over the right of way. We're able to resolve every single matter in the special permit for the rail cut, meaning building separation, height, setback, whatever, rear yard. We want to do that again here. And we do not support the idea of creating a new special permit for height in the yard. We are totally open to any mechanism that is a tweak on the existing special district zoning. And we direct this to both to HPD and the developer to come up with a solution. We have, since our last meetings with the MTA, Committee Board 4 has met with City Council Land Use and the council member and his staff in order to come up with an alternate solution. And we are going to pursue that very, very vigorously. The last item is, can you also, Joel, include on the distribution, which apartments are designated for homeless? We're very concerned that, again, they skew toward families as opposed to singles. That is our need in this neighborhood. We had a large number of homeless families in hotels, and we find that they are successful. The community is very, very concerned about using homeless units for singles. We have supportive housing for that, not in this location. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Jesse, I see you have your hand up. Jesse? Oh,
Yeah, thank you, JD. I appreciate you giving me a moment. And I just wanted to express, and we expressed this at the meeting that HPD came to regarding the MTA site. And I've expressed this in the past that, you know, you guys are hearing a lot of strong words and a lot of strong feelings tonight. And I just want to give you a little context, a little bit more context than that was already been provided, is that, you know, just recently over the last 5 to 6 years, we have seen building after building, you know, either be, you know, consciously neglected to a point where it gets demoed, where illegal demolition has occurred, permitted by the DOB and then retracted, and then buildings stuck in limbo for years. And so the community is seeing the preservation component of the city's goals not being fulfilled. And so when they are seeing the existing buildings being slowly taken away and the existing mix of incomes and folks being slowly pushed out by nefarious means or just complete neglect, and then seeing new things coming in that don't replace that, that's where people feel like they're not being listened to and they're not being heard, and that's what's happening. And so I would just, again, we've written letter after letter about the need to fix the existing loopholes and holes in the special districts area regarding demolition in particular. And I would think it would be beneficial to HPD to think about trying to resolve those issues sooner than later.
Jesse, thank you very much. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm just going to make my comments because I live on 48th Street and I have lived in this neighborhood for 30 more years. I have known what the neighborhood is like. I know what it's like now. I, along with Elta and Joe, sat down to negotiate the points of agreement, and we gave up the height, we gave up all kinds of things, and we made an agreement. We played by the rules. So when I hear no change, or the only change from last time, I believe, Felipe, it was 120 AMI, and now it's moved it up to 130, and that was the concession. after we rejected the proposal, that's really not enough. So we need to do better. And I have to say, down the road, the Port Authority development, the residential development that's going to go on 42nd Street, the residential development that's going to go around Penn Station, there's going to be opportunities for supportive housing, for low-income housing. It's important that the agreements made with the community to get those affordable and supportive housings are kept. It's important to work with the community honorably. I know you know that, Felipe and Paris. I know you guys understand that. But it's very difficult for me to hear that we're not supposed to talk to a city agency or a developer. I don't quite understand that. I don't think that's a productive way to work. And you know, Felipe, we want this project to succeed, and we believe we can help it succeed, but we need to work with everybody. So please take that to heart. And Jesse, you still have your hand up. Do you want to speak? No, okay. So I'm gonna, that's my comment. I respect everybody, and I know everybody's working very hard. There are no villains here, but we're really trying our best to get ahead. So please work with us in the next 40 or 50 days to achieve something that we can all agree with, including especially the community who spoke tonight. Joe, you have your hand up?
Yeah, as JD noted, we'll take our full position at our May meeting, and hopefully we can come back having met a number of times and resolve things. But I do want to propose a letter for tonight's meeting, and that is very specific to the Commissioner of HPD with copies to the mayor, that we want to remind HPD that our community has been very successful in working with HPD projects, because an RFP is issued, and then the community begins to negotiate with the agency, with the developers, and jointly. We need to remind everyone that we have done this successfully because we're able to come up with solutions. And we did this with every RFP that's been issued in the past 20 years. We can never be precluded from meeting with a developer who has the major stake in a project. So I propose that we write to the HPD commissioner, reminding them of what we've done before and making it clear that we will be meeting with this developer and any other developer for an HPD sponsored project going forward. And this idea that it can only happen when every single person is together in the room, we can be nimble, we can be thoughtful, and then we can all work it out. It is unbelievably odd how controlling this agency has been over these two projects, and we need to move past it, period. It has gone from the agencies in charge for an RFP, and then once it's an RFP, the developer starts to engage with the political process, and that's where the work gets done. And we've done it over and over. So I just want to put a very simple letter out there, very careful, to the Commissioner of HPD. So I seek a second on that letter.
I second. This is Dolores.
If I'm allowed, JD.
If you just wait 1 second, let's just get through this. I have a second on this, and I'll get right to you, Felipe. Is there any discussion about the letter? At the moment, you don't. Thank you, Felipe. If there's no discussion, all in favor of this letter, or anybody opposed to this letter, please raise your hand. Anybody abstaining? Felipe, thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me lower my hand now. I just want to clarify, like, I never said, or my intention wasn't to say that you're not allowed to speak to the developer. I just said that in that specific item, which is the MIs, the donut holes, it will be more convenient to have that conversation with us, because at this point, even though the developer has been trying to, advance the conversation with HPD, is HPD the entity on this scenario that has taken longer on being responsive with this. So in that spirit of, like, if you want to engage with somebody that, could make a decision on this, it should be, I would recommend you to engage with us. But with that said, I never it was never my intention to say that you're not allowed to go and talk to Joel and the rest of the team. You can totally do that. You're free to do it. And JD, Joe, rest of members of the board and the community, I think you have seen through previous experiences with us that we are open, more than open, and we welcome engaging with you guys. For the MTA side, we have had like more than a few meetings. I believe JD, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a period of time that we were meeting pretty much every week. So we're always been open to continue the conversation. So I'm a little bit at odds with kind of like what happened tonight. Like, but I just want to be clear. My intention was never to stop you guys from engaging with the developer, and it was more a recommendation that, you know, if you want to have a advanced conversation about the MIs and the donut holes, I would recommend you to do it with us, because we are the ones that are taking longer on being responsive with your requests and not the developer. That's it.
I got you. Felipe. Thank you. And I apologize if I misinterpreted the intention of what you said, but thank you for that clarification. I would just add, Felipe, engaging and listening is one part. The second part is compromising and moving ahead. And that is what is lacking, especially with the MTA side, but also that's what we need to push forward. But thank you, Felipe.
And JD, again, this is, you know, ULURP for both projects is a long process. It's an open conversation. You know, the city, HPD, we keep trying to make efforts to accommodate some of your requests. That the time for the MTA, for example, has expired. The community board time for the MTA expired. That doesn't mean that we stopped working on your requests. We keep working on it, and it's going to be the same for the DEP side. We are just at the beginning. We're here tonight with you. We heard you, and we want to encourage you to continue engaging with us. We're open to continue the conversation. And the exchange that just happened between you and me, Jay, you making a statement, me trying to clarify, is there a reflection of what this could be, right? And two-direction process, and always, you know, well-intentioned. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Felipe. Well said. Dolores.
I just want to reiterate what JD said. Saying you're hearing us and saying you're listening is very different from actually moving the needle. And Paris, I'm going to use the phrase that I used in a meeting that we had, one of our informal meetings. There's been a lot of static on recent projects with HPD. It's because for some reason, people are not recognizing this particular community knows its community, understands the process, and wants to work to solve our community issues and how that fits in with city issues. Something has changed in the last 5 or 6 years where we are being treated as if we're being tolerated and not a partner. That creates static. It creates static with the developer who's well-meaning and responding to an RFP. It creates static with the community overall. And it does not help for the future of any other developments to ensure that we work hand in hand and lockstep together. So saying you hear us, which is something we've heard over the last few years, over and over, we hear you, and still being at this point where we're disappointing a lot of people across the community for various reasons is why we're very concerned about communication.
Yeah, we hear you on that. There has been missteps with these particular processes. I'm not going to be able to go into that, but there's been missteps, and I think it's constructive to have these conversations and to hear about the communication issues and to troubleshoot, even at the commissioner level, how we can work better together. So I welcome that.
And Paris, what makes it sad for us, it's 40 years we've never opposed an HPD project, ever. Like, we've worked them out before they went into ULURP, every single one of them. And that's to the credit of the agency and the credit of this city agency, Manhattan Community Board 4, that we work together to figure out super creative ways to make it happen, right? And that's odd here. It's singular. It's not the norm. And that's why you hear the frustration from the community over and over. Because normally by the time we hit ULURP, everything has been worked out except for some small items. It's just not how we do business with HPD. So that's what's really saddening. We want you to hear that. And I didn't say you heard it, but just be aware that's part of what's driving this over and over.
Thank you, Joe. Jesse.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be talking so much on this. And I just want to back up Dolores, what Dolores said. You know, and I just want to say we are, this committee in itself, and this committee and the other, and CBN4 in general is really used to this. And I would just say you have an amazing team, HPD, on this, in particular, Douglaston and Actors Fund. And I would just, you know, talk to Steve Charno about Block 675 and what we were able to accomplish there, right? And during that whole period, and the commitments made by Douglaston and to not only to this board, but to the city, you know, significant commitments made about infrastructure and public safety and things like that. And so I think you can use the skill and the talent you have in your team. And Actors Fund too, they've been through this plenty of times with us. And so I would just really recommend, again, you guys know your business, but we know Douglaston, we know Actors Fund, and we can really work with them, and we can really problem solve. And I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Jesse. I think we have a letter. It was approved. We will put a letter out. I want to thank Felipe and Joel and Daniel and Melissa and Barbara and Paris for this discussion. I hope we have more discussions, and I hope you understand some of our frustration. We're very respectful of the work, the difficult work that you do, but we want this project to move forward. We want it to be successful for everybody. So thank you all for that.
JD, I'm sorry, before we wrap up, there's 2 more people in the attending section with their hands up. Do you want me to bring them over?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, it's Elizabeth and Maria.
Elizabeth, are you with us? Hello, Elizabeth.
She's not over yet.
I don't see an Elizabeth. Who's the other speaker? Maria?
Maria and Elizabeth. They should both be over now.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Hi, this is Maria. Hi.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, I just want
to.
Hi,
Yeah.
I'm actually outside, so just don't want to take up too much of your time. Just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Maria D'Angelo. I'm running for New York State Senate for District 30, which includes your district. I'm a 40-year resident of the Upper West Side and a frequent attendee of the community board meetings there. And several members of your community asked me if I would, you know, come in tonight and sit in. And I just want to say that I fully support, you know, so many of the comments about community engagement in the process of development, and especially in regard to preferences for community members. We have this issue on the West Side all the time. We've got a specific problem, especially with the elderly who are being, you know, priced out of apartments, and they can't afford their maintenance, food insecurity issues because their maintenance or their rent is so high. And we really have a need for housing for the elderly who are on fixed incomes, especially at a time of inflation. I know in many parts of the city in particular, we have artists, creative people, LGBTQ youth, children of people who live in the neighborhood, firemen, as you said, or firefighters, teachers, sanitation workers, et cetera, nurses, first responders who really need housing. And I fully support that. And I would commit to doing everything in my power to raise the community preference numbers from 50%. You know, I've proposed as high as we can possibly go on the Upper West Side, because I do think that neighborhoods really know what's best for them. And at the same time, we do have a citywide problem with affordable housing and housing the homeless, and that has to be considered, of course. But I do just wanted to acknowledge the comments that people were making. I ran for city council last year. I came in second out of 6 people on the Upper West Side, and I hope to have the opportunity to speak further. And I thank you for listening to me and giving me a minute or two to speak. Thanks.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Maria. Let me ask you this. How do you feel about the city keeping its agreements with the community?
Yeah, they must. We've been in a, one woman commented about how it felt like the last 4 to 6 years, things have really changed. And I have definitely seen that shift. And I think you couldn't be more precise. I'm so glad this meeting is on YouTube and I can listen to the comments in even more detail in terms of how, the neighborhood is becoming for the very rich and the very poor. And, that's something we're seeing in Manhattan. And I think there has been a shift. A political shift in making so many of our neighborhoods so much less hospitable to working people and to income families and families. We had an issue on the Upper West Side involving a homeless shelter for women and children that was working beautifully and integrated in the neighborhood, wonderful. And, the city, this is under the de Blasio administration, just came in and, moved the people out and moved in, people who weren't going to be as, the women in the women in the shelter and the families were so much a part of the community. It was a really heartbreaking situation. So, I think I've been through a lot of wars, in the neighborhood over this issue of community preference, and also, listening to the community and honoring agreements. I do hope that the new administration, the Adams administration, is going to be far more supportive than the de Blasio administration was, which was, very difficult to work with. So I do hope that happens. Of course, this is a state seat I'm running for, but I think there's a tremendous amount that I can do to help you and support you. And you will have an ally. You will have an ally in the state Senate. I will be at your meetings. I will listen to you. I'm, a person who is not beholden or bought by anybody. So, yeah.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for visiting us. Thank you very much. Janine, we had Elizabeth. Is she with us
Elizabeth,
now?
yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome, Elizabeth.
Oh, great, thanks. Sorry for the delay with my hand up earlier. My comments are going to be pretty much in line with Katie and Richard's. My name's Elizabeth Moss. I live at 504 West 48th Street, which is directly across from the site in question. I was born in New York City. I've lived in Hell's Kitchen for 30 years. I love the diversity of Hell's Kitchen. I love the sense of community. We hear that a lot about Hell's Kitchen. That is the most special thing. I love shopping locally, eating and drinking in local establishments. And I'm proud of the history of supportive housing that Hell's Kitchen has. And historically, we've been able to integrate those services. But frankly, at the moment, we're a neighborhood at risk. And this started before the pandemic with the ever rising costs of the retail rents, which have forced businesses to close. And, now we're at risk of losing our sense of community, as well as our social and economic relevance in New York. Frankly, we've hit the saturation point of supportive services, and we're at the tipping point. And I think New York City needs to think more fairly and holistically regarding the effect on excessive supportive services in any one community. We already have more supportive services than all our neighboring communities, and we desperately need more moderate middle-income housing. Teachers, shopkeepers, hospitality, Broadway workers, they're all getting priced out. And I'm against the city reneging on its original promise to make this site, fully moderate income housing. And when agreements aren't kept, the voters become disenfranchised, and it's a loss of a sense of community. And again, this is what we desperately need to maintain a vibrant residential and business neighborhood. And in terms of the size of the building, it sounds like this has been agreed to, but personally, I think the size and the massing is much too large for the location. And as many have pointed out at this meeting, the renderings we saw are misleading because already the 8-story rendering, in my opinion, the massing is too large. But what we're missing is it's going to feel like another story when all the mechanical equipment is added. And that's my 2 cents on the matter. Thank you.
Well said, Elizabeth. Thank you. With that, I'm going to wrap up this first agenda item. Again, thanking HPD and Douglaston and Actors Fund for coming. I'm going to turn it over now to my co-chair, Paul Devlin.
Thank you, JD. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, everybody from the HPD and sort of the site. Barbara, good to see you as always. So now we're going to have a presentation on Rebuild by Design. It's a discussion by Felipe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good evening.
Discussion about future thinking in terms of how can we make the West Side more green and have a thought process behind that. And so we have Jeanette Sorty from Syracuse University here to present to us. So go ahead, Jeanette, you have the floor.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much for having us, and also listening to the previous presentation and the comments from the community was really informative for the work we are doing. 3 of the students also joined. I have a super short presentation. How do we do this? Janine, we share our screen or?
I received 2 of the presentations. One was an intro and the other one seems like a longer presentation. If you tell me which one is the correct one.
Intro.
Is it I'm sorry, which one?
Intro.
Intro? Okay, I'll pull that one up.
And in the meantime, Jeanette, do you want to introduce your students?
Yes, of course. So I am Janet Sordi and I'm teaching the class together with Amy Chester from the Rebuild by Design. Maybe some of you know her already. And I have here Kyle and Ronan and Sierra. They will then introduce themselves later, and the work that they will show is the work they are doing on this specific area. Next, please.
Next
slide, please. It's going to be very brief. So this project or this agenda started as a collaboration between Rebuild by Design. We were working with the Senator Holman office and Community Board 1, 2, and 4 because, as you might know, the area is at risk for flood from storm surge, heavy rain, and also sea level rise in the future. Next, please. So the city, together with Rebuild by Design and federal funding, 9 years ago, they developed this project called the Big U that will address the East River front and Lower Manhattan. However, next slide, please. Still, there is no vision above Chambers Street. So we started discussing the opportunity to develop a flood plan also for this area, for the west side of Manhattan. And in particularly, next slide, please. Taking the opportunity to not only prevent flood, but see this as an opportunity to also make the district greener, more sustainable, and face climate change in the long term. Next, please. So we have, last semester, we taught a course. We organized a workshop with Community Board 1, 2, and 4, and the Senator Holman's office. Many people participated, and we looked at the whole neighborhood. We did a short book that we will be happy to share with you afterwards, looking at the whole neighborhood. And this semester, we are working with 5 groups, and they're focusing on specific areas. And the group that will present to you tonight is looking especially on Hell's Kitchen. Next slide, please. So I will leave it to them to introduce themselves and present to you their vision for the area. But really what we are trying to see is how can we prevent future risk by incorporating new design elements, technology, and especially nature-based solutions that can hopefully bring a better quality of life for the whole neighborhood. Before we give the floor to the students, I just want to say that they are students of architecture. They are learning, they are doing amazing work. But please be patient, and they're really looking forward for your inputs and do something that can be real. No, they're here to learn how to be better practitioners and really serve their communities, or at least that's what we are trying to instill into them. So
we promise not to be mean.
So no, of course, we like be real. No, that's what we are looking for. But we really hope to incorporate your inputs. And again, we will compile a report that will be widely diffused. So we want to make this as real as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeanette. Who's speaking next?
I will. Once Janine is able to bring up our presentation here. Okay, great. Thank you, Janine. And thank you, Jeanette, for the introduction. All right. Hello, and thank you for having us this evening. My name is Kyle Kalmar, and these are my partners, Sarah Taylor and Ron McCabe. Next slide, please. We are third-year architecture students at Syracuse University. This semester, we are fortunate to be studying New York City to explore topics of urban planning, next slide, policymaking, resiliency, and community design within the context of New York City. We are attending this meeting as an important component of our Cities at Risk course, which evaluates both the physical and social infrastructure of the west side of Manhattan and to speculate design interventions for change. Next slide. The core focus of our design project is around flood infrastructure in the wake of Hurricane Sandy and Ida, which revealed many vulnerabilities across the city. Protecting the city from future flood risk is a crucial need, and we see proposals for resilient flood infrastructure as an opportunity to address other climate-related and social justice issues that are also prevalent across the west side. Next slide. Our team selected neighborhood as Hell's Kitchen, which we have been investigating closely to identify issues specific to your community. Today, we will share images, maps, and diagrams of our findings in Hell's Kitchen as it relates to themes of flood risk, air quality, carbon reduction, and social resiliency. Next slide. Our information is derived from walking the neighborhood, collecting data from reports produced by various agencies of the New York City government, and from attending an earlier community board meeting and reviewing previous meeting minutes and needs statements. Next slide. We've worked meticulously to ensure the information we present to you today is accurate, but we invite you to correct anything you feel does not reflect your experience of the neighborhood, as well as to share your thoughts and recommendations for improving our work. Ultimately, our discussion tonight will inform our finalized proposal and design strategies, which will be published in a book that is a collection of our class's work. We hope this book can be a useful reference for your community to advocate becoming a green district. All right, next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ronan McCabe. I want to reiterate, thank you for having us today. So real quickly, I'm going to address some of the problems we're looking at. First off, this sort of imagery is addressing some of the water focused issues, and that's specifically looking at storm surge and extreme inundation. And storm surge, if you're unaware, is coastal flooding caused by waves during extreme storm events and causes some fairly sizable coastal damage, as you've seen from Ida and Sandy. And then extreme inundation is heavy events of rainwater, which can cause things from small nuisance flooding to extreme traffic disruptions. So for this map itself, you can see the storm surge only penetrates a little bit of the coast. It doesn't go too deep into the city, but the real issue comes up and when you hit sort of 8th Ave, 9th Ave, and 10th Ave, is the inundation starts to build up and cause heavy flooding. So next slide, please.
Hello, I'm Sierra, and this map highlights the different levels and areas of energy consumption, tree canopy, and green roofs in Hell's Kitchen. The energy data on this map shows the energy consumption in this location varies, but is particularly higher along 8th Ave near Port Authority. And with this research, we understood that this indicates that there are more high-rise buildings in that red areas. Next slide, please.
Kind of one of the final areas that we really kind of looked at data, looking actually at a New York City Department of Transportation report, as trying to understand sort of the traffic volume and kind of the elevated volume that there is because of the Lincoln Tunnel. It sort of identifies two concerns, one being air quality. Obviously, with higher levels of stalling because of higher traffic, air quality is then diminished with higher carbon emissions. And the other factor is safety, specifically for pedestrians and bikers. Hell's Kitchen actually does have, kind of some new improvements for bike lanes and protected areas along the waterfront. But as you move in towards the neighborhood, specifically around Lincoln Tunnel, there are a lot of areas for problematic kind of safety issues. The report produced by the New York City Department of Transportation makes a lot of suggestions for policy implementation and new laws to kind of help alleviate this issue. Next slide, please.
So this map sort of is an overlay of all three data sets, and it helps us to hone in and locate specific areas of focus that we want to address. I think the first major focus area is the Michael J. Quill bus depot, excuse me. The next area of focus would be piers 88 through 94. And last but not least, the Port Authority bus terminal in Lincoln Tunnel would be our third area of focus and primary intervention. Next slide, please.
So after kind of looking at our diagnosis and extracting from our data, we isolated kind of our project into 4 different priorities, those being safety and access, specifically access in terms of the inner neighborhood being able to access the waterfront and other public green space. Protected infrastructure. Hell's Kitchen is home to a lot of critical infrastructure, as I'm sure you're all well aware of, including the bus depots. It services the most kind of bus lines in all of Manhattan. So ensuring that those things are protected in kind of critical moments. Air quality and carbon reduction as that relates to green district and how we can ensure that that is mitigated. And the final one being water management, so that in times of flooding, there are systems in place that make sure that the least amount of damage and risk is produced. And we kind of located these things into tools to understand ways in which leveraging policy, design mechanisms, and even engineering at different scales, how those can be implemented across the neighborhood to alleviate these priorities. Next slide, please. So this diagrammatic map is sort of our strategic understanding of kind of all these systems coming together across Hell's Kitchen. The biggest thing is kind of the inclusion of different conveyance and water mitigation systems that would kind of go directly under the street or be built into kind of the redesign of creating more pedestrian streets and creating areas that kind of insulate the bus lines to make public transit more accessible and more convenient, as well as for protecting kind of the pedestrian, the biker. Sort of how this all comes together is kind of an accumulation of those tools all stacking upon each other. And if we can move into the next slide, we'll kind of look at our 3 hotspots again and maybe understand a little bit more specifically what this looks like. So as you can see highlighted, we look kind of at the UPS center as well as the Michael J. Quill bus depot. Some of the important things are relocating critical operations in these facilities off the ground level and ensuring that in a flood event, if there is no other protection in place, that they wouldn't be disrupted, as well as kind of pumping systems, underground conveyance with redesigns of the streets, specifically kind of on either side of the long ends of the bus depot, which you can see pictured is not a very friendly or kind of movable space. And another big idea that we think would be really kind of innovative is creating friendly bus hubs in areas where there's kind of large parking lots adjacent to these larger facilities for really easy kind of drop off and transportation, both for bus drivers and for bus riders. Next slide, please. And these are kind of 2 precedents, understanding what that might look like. Some street redesign where buses and pedestrians are actually prioritized and kind of really removing the car traffic out of kind of cross streets. And then on the right, a bus hub for an understanding of how that might look as a safer pickup area. Next slide, please.
Now we're looking at, I think, piers 88 through 94, what we're calling the cruise terminal as our hotspot number 2. In this area, though, the primary issues include, I think, air and water quality, as well as storm surge and extreme rainfall. And so I think first and foremost, how we want to look at this is we want to look at it from a filtering the water as a potential option. So something like living seawalls, which is a highly replicable design process and easy to install. That could be one of the successful methods. And then as well, we are looking at another tool such as, you can go to the next slide, please. Another tool, which is a much greater infrastructure investment, I think would be much longer down the line, which is creating a berm over the existing roadway. And what that would do is allow you to preserve the public park system you already have in play, because the Greenway is a great area. And so we don't want to disrupt that at all with these current infrastructure investments like a hard flood wall. I think it'd be much more successful to do a passive system like a berm, which could prioritize the pedestrian and provide you with plentiful green space, as well as protecting against flood risk. Next slide, please.
Sorry for the error. This slide is supposed to say Lincoln Tunnel and Port 30 for a third hotspot. But with this area, we noticed that the Lincoln Tunnel causes extreme congestion with transportation. It's an active area for pedestrians and also bicyclists. And it is close to proximity and to many restaurants. And just from our tool interventions, we were thinking about having, creating more friendly street designs, also implicating new traffic laws, which have been recommended from the Department of Transportation, and just relocating critical operations. Next slide, please. So with those tools, this will allow for a more safe area for pedestrians and bicyclists while creating more green spaces, while having these green facades will also improve the air quality in this area. Next slide, please.
That kind of brings us to the end of our presentation. So we still have an activity planned. We're realizing probably now that it's not going to work quite with being able to have everyone actively engage on kind of drawing on this map with us with the formatting of this call. But you know, we want to open it up first if anyone has any questions or clarifications about sort of what we presented, or if there's anything that they'd like to discuss. And if there aren't any questions, we actually have a few questions for you to help us kind of guide sort of the specifics of what our project will end up looking like kind of at the end of the semester.
Terrific. That's very, very helpful and a very good presentation. If I can make one recommendation on presentations, to number your slides so that when we ask questions, we'll know which slide to refer back to. But that's minor. So I see a few hands up. So let's get some conversation going. I'll start with Leslie and then go to Dolores. So Leslie.
Great presentation. Thank you, guys. It was fantastic. My only question in looking at the slides and listening to the presentation, was this done before open street dining was put into place? And what kind of impact do you think that would have on your recommendations?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So yeah, this definitely kind of is a project that's certainly following open street dining and kind of those pop-up structures that we've seen. I think that's actually a little something that we've considered with sort of the street redesign and kind of pedestrian areas where the sidewalk has a lot larger kind of an extension, taking away from, you know, sort of the regular car traffic lanes. And the hope is that there would be a higher allowance for those, maybe even larger structures for kind of small businesses, which I know in Hell's Kitchen is definitely kind of a you know, more of a popular thing. A lot more people have kind of this, or a lot more about that culture in Hell's Kitchen. So sort of the allowance of larger storefronts to really open up onto the street. But yeah, that's a great suggestion and something that we can kind of incorporate into our drawings.
Thanks, Kyle. Thank you. Dolores.
Thank you very much for the work that you've put in place. I'd like to say that I love the berm idea. Don't think that there's ever going to be a budget for that. But I'd like to ask critically, you know, a lot of the suggestions that you had about changing circulation of traffic and dealing with the pedestrian, not quite sure. Maybe you can expand on a little bit how that is connecting with reducing the amount of risk that we have from water events. Because what it seemed that the focus shifted from actually mitigating some of the potential downfalls of high water events to pedestrian issues. So confused with that.
Sure, yeah, no, that's great. And I can kind of allude that the shift that you sense is definitely a part of kind of just our progression over the course. Is I think we went very focused into the flood infrastructure in the beginning, and then sort of throughout the development of the strategies and how those get deployed, we tried to incorporate more and more kind of the social infrastructural tools and ways to approach that. I think that the street redesign, the idea behind that is that that's kind of a system that has the ability to stack, where different conveyance methods of kind of, if we're already intervening into the street, then I think it's very much in the parameter of the project to discuss what happens below the street and infrastructure for that. And we're kind of referencing from one of the presentations we heard in the course. One Architecture is the firm for an East Harlem plan, where they introduced kind of 3 different systems to either place canals in these pedestrian-friendly streets, or kind of basins that get set underneath just for extra water storage, or even something kind of as large and engineered as a water pumping system. We're certainly not engineers or technical enough to know kind of the extents of how that operates fully, but that is definitely the hope, is that there's kind of a possibility for those to combine and attack both issues at the same time.
Thank you. Paul, may I ask a follow-up?
Of course.
Thank you. Sierra, you had mentioned in your initial comments about the street trees, and wondering if part of the focus that you all had looked at is our community as it exists. We don't have a lot of green space. There may not be budget for creating green space, but just wondering if you had looked at solutions working with the amount of street trees that we have and increasing possibly some mitigation through permeable surfaces or things like that, using what we already have in place. So Sierra, was I correct that you had mentioned something about our street trees in the initial time you were speaking?
Yeah, I more so talked about what's already existing, yeah, and the green roofs, also the green canopies as well. But yeah, so we're from our tools, we're just mostly looking at seawalls and just kind of using the green space also is adding more to the sides and what's already existing, like you said. But yeah, I think we want to continue looking further in what other implications can we make for providing a more green area as well.
Yeah, and hopefully I can add on a little bit to that. So in that book Kyle referenced earlier that was produced already by our peers, I list a lot of great tools for, I think, active street design that can be fit into some situations, but may not allow normally trees or planters, because these can be great assets in providing shading, reducing urban heat island effect, and just be generally overall beneficial for the urban resilience that we're trying to deal with. So I think us getting that book out to you guys would be super helpful.
Great, thank you so much. Joe, and then I'll go to JD after Joe.
Yeah, just a few comments. One is you should go to the Port Authority website to look at the planned future bus terminal expansion, because it needs to be reflected on your data. It's a major thing coming, and that's what's going to happen. Second, on your maps, few notes. First is you don't have all the bike lanes, and I guess you could get those easily from the community board. They're not mapped, all the bike lanes that we have. A couple of have been done recently. The last piece is your base data you should check. Your flood maps are not correct. Having lived through Hurricane Sandy, but also I developed affordable housing in our district. We simply did not flood in those areas. And also I actually buy flood insurance and I know what the elevations are. So I think you've gotten some bit of scrambled data. We do not get flooding on 8th Avenue. We do not get flooding around DeWitt Clinton Park whatsoever. The elevations are so much higher. Our flooding is definitely down in the West 30s because of the rail yards. The tunnel, of course, always shows up on flood maps as below grade, and then down in Chelsea. But the areas you noted for flooding, it doesn't happen there at all. So you got to check where that data came from, because it's pretty inaccurate.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is the feedback we needed.
Thanks, Joe. JD and then Dale. JD?
This was just terrific. I think we should take a vote to send you all to take over city planning, because obviously you have more imagination than city planning does at the moment. So congratulations. I have 2 quick questions. One is the infrastructure of the fill on 11th Avenue, 12th Avenue is that was shoreline before. So when you had that burn and those cars going underneath, it looks great, but Did you look into what's underneath the shoreline there if that was sustainable? And if not, that's okay, but it's something to consider. And the second question is, I love those designs of the streets with people walking and how wonderful. But the fact is, hundreds of people live in apartments on those streets. They may need medical services. There may be a fire emergency. They may need to pick up their children, whatever. Do you think about real life, how that works out in real life? Is that part of the planning too? Difficult issue, but congratulations all around. Nice work.
Thanks, JD. Dale?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. Sorry, my voice. As co-chair of the Transportation Planning Committee, I was very interested to see the transportation components of your plan. I want to, concur with Joe's point that a lot of our transportation infrastructure, and not just bike lanes, including some of the roadway designs, have been improved and are happening as we speak, and they don't reflect in the current mapping. So you could certainly start to catch together the more up-to-date data on bike lanes and dispositions of streets, and there's some upcoming plans for more tree wells along with pedestrian refuges along some of our big avenues. So some of the stuff
and shared streets that are coming too.
And shared streets, absolutely, Joe. Yeah. So some of this stuff is some stuff is bubbling up, which it would behoove you to capture. And then and I'm actually like, I live on 34th between 9th and 10th, so I'm pretty aware of the flood zones because they're like near me, but not where my building is. So yeah, some of the, I don't know what the criteria for the flood mapping was, if it's like if it's projecting something, or, but it didn't track with what I've seen of the floodplains on the west side. Excuse me. But I also want to know, is this presentation available to us in like oh, and also Joe mentioned the Port Authority bus terminal development, but there was also a working group called Hell's Kitchen South Coalition that worked through some plans for the Port Authority owned property along the cut. So from like 30s towards the terminal. And they have some, that plan has some interesting, you might, those plans might seek to intermarry or interrelate in some ways, because there's a lot of the proposal includes a lot of green and connectivity elements, which would benefit from your take on the issues. So I encourage you to look at that plan. I encourage you to look at as Joe said, the Port Authority's plan for its the large structure that they plan to replace the terminal with, and related structures, and also update the mapping. And I would love to see this myself. So if the committee members and can share it, if Janine can share it with us, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I added into the committee Dropbox.
Oh, it's in the Dropbox. Great, thank you. What's in the Dropbox reflects what was presented tonight?
Yeah, it was the two presentations that they presented.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Janine.
It was just added, I think. Thank you, Dale. I'm not seeing any other questions. Kyle and Sarah and Ronan, this is phenomenal. This is, as you now know better than most of us even sitting here, how daunting this is. We have heat island consumption, and how do we address the consumption issues of our current structure? And then how do we think about solving problems in the future of water surges and flooding, and whether we have more resiliency, we restrict the water from coming in, we protect the people once the water is in, or how do we get the water out when it does get in? And so it's a very complicated, very deep issue. And your presentation really does tackle an immense amount in a very short presentation. So thank you for pulling that together in such a concise way. And great job. And we look forward to actually going through the materials more in depth. And I'm going to second JD's opinion that we're going to move you into the planning commission and get rid of everybody else and put you guys in. Bob, did you have a question you wanted to ask, or just applauding?
I was trying to applaud, but ended up being a hand.
So Jeanette, and I want to also thank Amy for the work that she's done, even though she's not here tonight. And so thank you very much for this presentation, and we hope this goes well for you guys too. Oh, wait, Ronan, did you say that you had questions you wanted to ask us though? I was wrapping up, but I thought that.
Well, yeah, I think that, well, thank you everyone for your feedback. That's really helpful. And it's good to know that some of the data things, and especially, I know that just kind of thinking back, I think most of the data we're looking at is 2019, 2018 probably. So that would make sense why some of the, the bike lanes and things that have just been implemented. So we'll definitely take a look, and it's good to know about some of these plans. But yeah, most of our questions were a little bit more broad, and you guys kind of answered those mostly just to get these kinds of responses and egg those on. So you guys did it without our help. So thank you.
Welcome to Community Board 4.
Yeah, Janine has their presentation, and perhaps we can also share the emails. Maybe if you come into a plan that you think it would be helpful for them to see, or you have further comments, of course, this would be really helpful. This is a work in progress, and also a conversation that Rebuild by Design has established with the community for a while now. So, of course, this is a course, but we really hope that some of this, will be material to become closer to something real. So, thank you so much for your time and for having us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Congratulations, guys. Good work. So, JD, I think that's the end of the second item. Did you want us to talk about some of the other issues that are going on and just report out?
Yeah, Paul, if I would call, if you don't mind, I'm going to call on you to update us on the buildings. I think it's 410, 412 West 46th Street. I believe you went to the press conference there. We had issued a letter about a possible trying to arrest a potential demolition, and also in one of the houses, the tenants in the building were not treated very well. You went to that press conference that Eric Botcher had.
Yeah, so we went to a press conference at 410, 412 West 46th Street. Many of you know that 412 had a fire. Those tenants were displaced into 410, but the 410 conditions are atrocious and abominable. And the owner is basically going through a demolition by neglect process. They are just ignoring everything in the building until it collapses on itself. We have asked that 412 use HPD emergency repair program funding to restore the building, but I think we're too late on that one. Based on the commentary that we heard from Eric at the press conference, it sounded like they weren't going to actually try to pursue that. However, on 410, there is still an opportunity for some more to be done there with the HPD. And Joe, it was a 7A takeover of 410.
A 7A administrator appointment through housing court.
Yeah, thanks. I knew there was better language than I knew. So we're going to continue to fight to push for HPD to do the ERP at 412. But to be honest, I think that's going to be a much bigger uphill fight. But the point that was made at the press conference was this is a pattern that has been going on in Hell's Kitchen. This is now I believe the 19th building that this has been going on in. And so we are trying to put pressure on the elected officials and on HPD to come in and do preservation and not allow these buildings to reach the point of such deterioration that Department of Building comes in and declares them unsafe and they're allowed to be taken down. And so that's sort of where we stand. Joe, you want to add more?
Yes, want to note that I did speak to Eric's office prior to that press conference and got a commitment that the board would meet again with HPD and his office regarding the 410 or the 412 demolition to get ARP funds. And he did agree that they would continue to pursue it. And we need to hold his feet to the fire on that because it is an easy way out to lose another building. And in fact, the board has been extremely successful. We've done this about 3 or 4 times, a combination of a 7A administrator appointed by HPD and then HPD ERP funds that preserve the buildings and eventually go into some sort of affordable housing program. That should be our win here in total. And the two buildings, and a building that this group has certainly sat in, that's 353, 355 West 30th Street, is exactly that. And the other one is 300 West 46th Street, where ERP funds came in to stop demolition and the building was eventually redeveloped for affordable housing. So I think if we've done it before and there were less resources, we can do it today when there are more.
And Joe, what's the address on the other building we're working on with that owner?
343 West 47th Street. And we do have a meeting, JD, I believe, coming up this week again, right?
Correct.
Yeah, just so everybody knows that, JD and Joe and I have been meeting with the owners and with HPD to go through step by step.
DOB.
GOB. Going through step by step, each step of the process. We're meeting with their engineering team. We're talking about floor joists. We're talking about walls. We're really trying to preserve this building as best we can.
I pulled out all my engineering expertise in this one to just like.
Oh, it was obnoxiously terrific. It was
really to figure out ways to keep the building up and have it rebuilt.
Yeah, no, it was great. Dale, do you have a question on this topic?
I do. So yeah, I ran into one of the tenants, and he provided me with his testimony, his statement with regard to that press conference. And while it was full of like horrible stuff and emotional content, I was hoping for like the salient points about this building, like who are the owners, what's the history, what's their violation history, what is the zoning specific, is the zoning the same for both buildings? And so on. I bet Joe knows that already. And also, like, as I understand it, they have a nonprofit advocate working with them.
The buildings are in the preservation area of the special zoning district, therefore they cannot be.
Oh, they are.
Yes,
yeah.
unless unsafe. I mean, they're in the center of the preservation area on West 46 between 9th and 10th. Housing
basically
conservation
across from Hartley
coordinator.
Housedale. I'm sorry, just to interrupt, Joe. It's basically across from Hartley Housedale, just to give you perspective of where it is.
Yeah, but I wasn't aware that the line, it was within the lines, the bounds of the, okay.
The tenants have been working with housing conservation coordinators, the tenant advocacy organization, for a number of years. They are representing them in this also. The specific thing that is troublesome is that the buildings have a long history of violations because they've been used as illegal hotels for many years. And there were violations about basically they didn't meet fire egress because the apartments were cut up into rooms. DOB intervened over and over and over. And the owners, basically the pattern is they bought the buildings for a lot of money. They made a lot of money by renting them as Airbnbs. And then as they deteriorated, a fire happened. They did very little work. And then they filed to do something, which they could not do. They were stopped by DOB. And then the owners left the roof open. So there was more deterioration in the 412 building.
Yeah.
So our goal is twofold: protection of the tenants in the 410 building and getting it renovated, or not say renovated, but at least brought up to code, and then protection of the against demolition of the 412 building. So what I'm also looking into is I think they might be in arrears on taxes now. So that means we're taking a full circle to like 25 years ago, where owners are not paying taxes. It's another issue.
And how many remaining tenants are we talking about who are impacted?
I think isn't it 7 or 8, Paul?
Yeah, I was going to say 8. So
yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coloring in the blanks, because the testimony was very compelling, but it didn't have the details. Yeah. But I'm glad to hear they're working with you guys and with the nonprofit.
And remember, there are 40 apartments total we're talking about that are at risk here, 20 in each building.
40 total?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So 7 survivors out of 40.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And survivor is a good word for the way they're living, with no heat, no hot water, no roof, the rain comes in on them. It's really atrocious living conditions.
And that's in the occupied portion, not in the fully vacant portion.
Yeah. All right. All right. Thank you, JD. I think that's all from me.
That's all from me. Thank you.
So shall I entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I don't think you can, Paul. I think that has to come from a committee member.
No, he wanted to ask for it, and so we gave. Joe said, and I second.
Third.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you, Paul, JD.